how different are people really? Broadly speaking, there are kind of two camps of thought when it comes to teaching, training, creating programs, things like that. Within our sphere of martial arts and fitness, and this certainly goes outside of it if you look at education and all that as well. There is a divide between people who kind of like to partition everything out into completely atomized, segmented little things of every little thing is different. If it's 1 degree off, it is different. And then there are people, and look, I fall into this category, that, if things are broadly, tangentially related to each other, they're the same. And the truth is that it's actually quite nuanced. So there's a couple of things we need to talk about here. And, this isn't a whiteboard video or anything. I'm not pulling up a lot of numbers here. I will leave a couple of links in the Substack, but one of the things that we need to understand is that people are 99.9% the same when we are talking genetics. 99.9 is a very strong number. It's a number that is hard to wrap our head around because we look around and we see, oh, this person's different. I have red hair. You might have very dark hair, or you might be blonde. I tend to have pale skin and freckles, and you might be of a darker complexion. I'm tall. Some people are short. Some people tend toward more obesity. Some people tend towards more thinness, gauntness. So we obviously observe differences between people, but genetically speaking, we see 99.9% the same. To put that into focus, pigs are about 98% the same as us genetically. This is one of the reasons why we can do porcine heart transplants. So you can actually have porcine valves and stuff transplanted to correct for heart attacks and stuff. Pigs are extraordinarily close to us. It also makes them a very good protein source. I'm sorry to the Jews and Muslims in the crowd, but the pigs are a very good protein source for human beings. And some of that is because we share that DNA, so there is a compatible nutrient breakdown there. And so 98% the same, right? We're even closer to chimpanzees, right? I think it was like 99.8 or something in chimps. I don't remember the numbers exactly. The differences that we observe between people are in that 0.1%. And well over 90% of those differences, something like 94% of those differences that we observe between people, is individual variation. It's not even variation between groups. The differences between males and females are significant, but genetically, they're a tiny fraction of differences. The differences between, everybody likes to bring up fast twitch muscle fibers in people of African descent versus people of European descent. Some of the things like eye shape that we see between Westerners and Asians, some of that, like, that kind of population level variation is such an extraordinarily tiny percentage of what makes us us. It's almost not relevant beyond like strict medical procedures. When it comes to strict medical procedures, the differences matter a lot. But this is something that we see in training, right? If you look at fitness training, we find that, like, a good example is the differences between males and females. We know that females on average tend to have far less fast twitch muscle fiber than males, which tends to make them less capable of moving heavy loads, even at peak fulfillment of their fitness. What does that mean? Well, I mean, it just means that there are genetic limits. But here's the thing, that, like, we still know that a trained woman is probably going to outlift an untrained man because the training potential is still there. In fact, we know that women tend to gain muscle at about the same rate as men. They just cap off sooner than us. And evolutionarily speaking, that makes sense, but that's another argument. But what we're talking about here really is the idea that people are extraordinarily similar in the broad strokes. And this is what I'm talking about, is in the broad strokes. in the broadest of strokes, being human, we are all extraordinarily similar. And this is why there are universal principles to things like fitness, like gaining muscle, losing fat, uh, you know, like how calorie balance, energy balance basically is the key determinant of your body composition. And how the necessity of nutrients is pretty much static across the entire population. When it comes down to the specific exact numbers and the specific exact proportions in your diet and everything, that may be a little bit more individual, but in the broad strokes, it's pretty much universal. Well, this is the same in martial arts. There's pretty much, I mean, look, there's a million different variations on how to throw a jab, right? But at the end of the day, you're looking to throw a punch in a straight line that lands with the front of the knuckles, the front of the fist, on the target. And you're trying to do so with as little lateral motion as possible while still achieving the goal of hitting the target, right? I mean, that's the definition of a straight punch, not even a jab, it's the definition of a straight punch. So there might be some individual variation how any individual throws it, depending on what stance they're using even, so there's contextual variation. There's going to be individual variation on exactly, how our joints sit. We know that some people have deeper sockets, some people have shallower sockets on their ball and socket joints, on their hips and shoulders. That's going to change things a little bit. We know there was a cool study done with exercise volume that the way that it worked, the way that we found this out was they grouped people comparatively depending on where their exercise volume was before the thing versus where the volume was for the test. And because the standard deviation was like double that of the mean, that means that the people that were high responders basically responded equally. You basically had a third of the people who could have gone either way. You had about a third of the people who responded better, who became high responders to dropping their training volume, and about a third of the people who became high responders to increasing their training volume. That's pretty huge, right? Because that means that while you might all be doing the same exercises, you might be doing the same overall framework, skeleton of a program, you as an individual are going to have certain requirements within that. And again, this is incredibly important to understand for martial arts, because one of the things, especially in the traditional side of things, people get stuck into, this is how you hold your stance, this is how you hold your structure, this is how you hold your posture, this is your technique. And what we have to understand is that, we say this in Wing Chun all the time, your techniques are based on principles. Your technique should manifest as your needs dictate. And so provided you are following the principles of what that technique is trying to do, how you get there doesn't matter so much, provided you're doing things like keeping your body safe so you're not injuring yourself, keeping yourself tactically safe so you're not providing opportunities for the other guy, things like that, right? So it is a very nuanced and complex subject, but the truth really is that people are mostly the same, and yet individuals are incredibly different. So it is important that when we are designing our training, whether we're talking martial arts or fitness or both, there are universal principles that we should be after. And yes, I even mean universal in martial arts. At the end of the day, there really isn't a such thing as styles beyond your style as an individual. Different arts are just different problem-solving models. That's all they are. So there's going to be a certain set of universals that you're trying to get to, and then your art, your model, your style, which is really not an appropriate term. Got another video on that. That is going to basically more be an organization of priorities, not really determining right and wrong as far as technique goes. Right, there's a ton of similarity, and there are a ton of differences. And the thing is that all of those differences happen within the similarity. They don't really happen outside of the similarity. There is very, very little true difference And the differences that we have are variations on a theme. So, like, are people mostly the same? Yes. Are people extraordinarily different? Yes. Both are true. This is one of the reasons why we have the bell curve, and this is one of the reasons why you're probably not an outlier, but you might be. But the likelihood that you might be is extraordinarily tiny. Extraordinarily tiny. I mean, that's literally what the normal distribution even says. That's the bell curve, right? When you look at the standard deviations, I mean, you get to like 3 and 4 standard deviations and you are literally down into that outside of the 99.9% the same. So, anyway, this is just kind of a rant that I want to go on, but it's kind of an important one. So, yeah, people are the same, and people are also different, and it is important to understand your universals, and it is also incredibly important to be able to adjust things in your training plans, either whether it's for you or for students or even just for peers. It is important that you are able to allow for wiggle room and variation amongst individuals, because the universals will stay true, but the individual variation is absolutely necessary. All right, I will talk to you guys later. Good journey. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share. Check us out on our other socials, and please head over to blacksunboxing.com to get a little more info, including how to contact us. Furthermore, if you are in the Phoenix area, please feel free to stop in, say hi, join in for a class, whatever. Also, if you ever see us cite sources or just for additional content, please check out our Substack. That is where we put all of the sources we use in our videos and is a major part of this. Plus, it serves as a membership platform for long distance learning and for people who would like to support us but aren't local. We would greatly appreciate it if you signed up. Even just the free membership helps us out a lot. All right, I will see you guys in the next video. Good journey.